What's going on, everybody? Andrew Thompson here of the Andrew Thompson Interviews YouTube channel. I have a very, very special guest on the channel today. He is the head of security for numerous metropolitan area nightclubs, former vice president of MAS security, and probably the focus of what we'll be talking about today. He's the former head of security for WWE. This is James Tillis. James, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing great, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you. I know we talked about it off air already, but I appreciate you taking the time and willing to do this for me. Just to start us off here, just how have these last couple of months been for you? Since the COVID-19 outbreak, what have you been up to?
Well, the COVID-19 outbreak has hit my family pretty hard. I've lost quite a few members of my family. An uncle, an aunt, a great aunt, getting ready to bury my cousin, lost quite a few church members and some close friends of the family. So it's been one thing after another with this, and I just pray that everybody, takes this thing seriously and, not to get off on politics, but wear a mask.
All right.
That's the only way that we can try and, defeat this thing.
Firstly, I just want to say I'm sorry, for the losses that you endured over the past, however many months it's been since the pandemic started. Firstly, just wanted to get that out the way. And for sure, 100%, backing what James is saying, for anybody that's listening, please wear your mask, and, take care of yourself and make sure, and by way of you wearing a mask, you're taking care of others. To kind of transition out of that, it seems like, speaking about what you do, it seems like security has been a job that you've kind of always been associated with, and at a high level, might I add. Just how did you get into this, and was it something that just came along, or was this something that you had wanted to pursue for quite some time?
It was basically something that just came along when I was in college. I went to a junior college out in North Carolina. It's now a university, to date myself. But yeah, I went out there to play football. And one night, my freshman year, me and a bunch of the players went to a nightclub in Murfreesboro, North Carolina. And the name of the college was Chowan Junior College at the time. Now it's Chowan University. And one thing led to another, and the owner/manager asked me if I, would be interested in doing a couple nights here and there when the season was over, and that translated into me coming home and going to Kane College, and I started working security at little nightclubs, and before you knew it, it was almost like overnight. I started working with a gentleman by the name of Gerard Massioli, and we went from one nightclub in New York City to running 70% of the major nightclubs in New York City.
Wow.
And in New Jersey area. Yeah, I ran clubs like Studio 54, the Roxy, NV, Octagon, the Red Parrot. We at one point we had over 600 guys working for us for 6 nights a week through the early 90s through 90s, and that's how I basically got with WWF.
At the time, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they had called us up to. They had just bought a property in Times Square, or were leasing a property in Times Square, and a young lady by the name of Ann Russo. Her name is now Ann Russo Gordon, sweetheart. She called the company and said that they had interviewed all the major companies in New York City and wanted to know why we hadn't applied for the job. And our office manager got in my ear and said, some company named WWF wants you to come in and interview for the job. And I says, what is WWF? Couldn't put the pieces together. And they said, oh, it's a wrestling company. And I said, no, I don't do commercial. I don't do that type of thing. And so I sent somebody else over, and they didn't make it to the meeting. And so Ann called the office the next day and said they didn't make it to the meeting. We'd really like to hear from you guys because, we're getting this, it was 80,000 square foot property. And we want, you guys come, very highly recommended. And so I went over there, and I had a meeting in Connecticut with them. And before you knew it, we had the contract, and they said, but we want Mr. Tillis to run the security. I said, well, all right. I really didn't give you a price for me, And they said, well, whatever. And I said, okay, well, this is my price. And they said, oh, okay, no problem. And this is what we want to do. About 2-3 months later, they said, we're going to start bringing talent down. Because at this point, it was just a restaurant downstairs and a merchandise upstairs. And I said,
and you're referring to
talent?
WWE headquarters, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they were going to start bringing wrestling talent to the facility to sign autographs, and then they started showing the pay-per-views there, and it was like overnight. They said, "Okay, we'll open it up for a nightclub now." And how many guys can you get in here? I said, I can put it in. I can fill the place, with security, whatever you need. And I said, but this is going to take some adjusting to this. And it was like, Jimmy, just put it together. Put it together. So now you're looking at a Friday, Saturday night. Our first night there, I think we had over 7,000 people in Times Square trying to get into this building. It was a cluster, to say the least. We had all kinds of. It was amazing. We had people there from Pamela Anderson.
Yeah.
It was just amazing. Susan Sarandon was in there. It was incredible. And I was like, okay, this is getting a little ridiculous. So everything was, we brought them in, the promoters, because we knew all the promoters in New York City. We had the big time promoters that we had worked with, from the other spots. And this place it was just enormous. And it was like, after that, I would say literally about 3 months after that, Ann called me up on a Saturday, on a Sunday morning, she called me. And she said, I need you to be in Connecticut on Monday morning. I said, well, why, Ann? She goes, don't ask me why. That's how she was. We had a great relationship. She was like, don't ask me why. Just be there. And I said, well, if you're going to fire me, I'm not coming out to Connecticut. I said, did I do something wrong? She says, just be there. I go up to Connecticut. I meet her, and we go into a room. And there's JR was there, Ann Russo was there, Liz DeFabio was there, a gentleman by the name of Rich Herring was there, and they sat me down at this conference table, and they said, I just want to let you know that the boys really like how they're being treated and the security they're getting at the restaurant when they go to sign autographs, and we're looking to put security on the road. And I said, oh, okay. And he goes, this is what we need. And this gentleman's name was Rich Herring and Jim Ross. They were doing most of the talking. And I basically said, yeah, I can do this. And he goes, I don't want you to get bored, so I want you to get me like 8 to 10 guys. That way you can alternate. And I said, oh, Well, what do you mean alternate? He goes, no, you're going to be traveling with the boys. Now, didn't sink in. And I'm like, okay, now this is like 2000, because I literally started with them in 96, I believe it was, with the restaurant going back and forth in 97. And then, because everything just started to move so quickly. And he goes, you're going to be on the road. I was like, well, I don't fly. And Jim Ross goes to me, he goes, are you sure? Because this is what we're paying. And I said, oh, I could fly for that. I said, but I have a lot of nightclubs that I do. I have a lot of nightclubs that I do on the side. He goes, well, I'm sure you'll find time. And I looked at it and I said, okay. He goes, but make sure, you get some other guys and we're going to try this out and see how it works. And I said, okay. He goes, now, mind you, and this is Jim Ross, he goes, mind you, this is on a trial basis. And that trial lasted, it was some of the best times of my life. I mean, that trial lasted until May 9th, 2011. Was my last day in Birmingham, Alabama. It was my last day on the road. And, that we were called the Jimmies at one point because there was myself, there was another gentleman by the name of Jimmy Velasquez, Jimmy Noonan, Jimmy D'Angelo, and I had a couple other guys that they just called Jimmy because everybody was named Jimmy. And, at one point in time, and all these guys I hired because I did all the hiring for what was then called Match. So I brought these guys out on the road. And at one point, it got to be a little sticky. Everybody, thought that they were bucking for my job. Everybody wanted to, thought they had an in. And so at one point, Rich just said, you know what? I'm letting everybody go. And I said, well, it's been a pleasure. He goes, no, I'm letting everybody go but you. He goes, you're going to have to do this. Now it went from me alternating guys to now I have to do this consistently. I would fly out on Fridays and fly home on Wednesdays. And Rich Herring said, we're going to keep Jimmy Noonan as well. Everybody that was there worked for me in a nightclub at, all over the city. And so when I had to let them go from WWE, which it literally was within a matter of 8-10 months, some feelings were taken and things of that nature. And I made WWF, WWE my passion for the next 10 plus years on the road. The bad part, and there were some great parts. The guys were just unbelievable. And I say that, wholeheartedly. I thought that I worked with some tough guys in the city that, that bounced and did security for me. But I would say that 100% of the guys were some of the toughest and nicest people that I had ever met. And they became like my second family. The bad thing was I missed my kids growing up.
Yeah.
But it was a great experience. Unbelievable.
Did you tend to notice?
I still keep in contact with some of these guys.
Did you tend to notice that sometimes? Did you tend to notice that sometimes when you were on the road, when you would see guys, because technology isn't as advanced. It wasn't as advanced as it is now. Like now, you just a FaceTime call away, and you can easily get in contact with your family. But back then, I'm 100% sure it wasn't that simple. As far as visibly seeing your family. Did you notice that started to take like a toll on some of the guys back then, like just being away from their respective families?
I can't say that I would have noticed that because of the mere fact that, back in those days and when I was there, you had just unbelievable entertainers there. You had, obviously you had The Rock, and You had The Undertaker, and you had Eddie Guerrero, and John Bradshaw Layfield, and Mark Henry, and Randy Orton was coming up at that time. John Cena and Batista. It was just an unbelievable time. I mean, to this day, right now, I still don't watch wrestling. I can't bring myself to watch it because it brings back some great memories, and sometimes I just sit back and go, wow, these are the guys that I was a small chapter, a small part in the chapter of their lives because of the mere fact that when I tell you we were a family, it was serious. I mean, you had Trish Stratus and Lita.
Yeah.
It was, it was just it was a beautiful thing. It really was.
Like I just heard you mention The Rock. Like, isn't it crazy? Like, to kind of, because I mean, obviously you were around him for a great portion of his time at WWE. Like, isn't it crazy to see where he is now? Like, the dude's like the highest paid actor in the world right now, and he's like in every single movie. Like, and he's like owning his own production company. Just bought the XFL. Like, this dude is like making major plays like in life.
Let me tell you, you have no idea how proud I am to be able to sit down and tell somebody, oh, The Rock, yeah. When I first met The Rock, he was backstage, and this was before I got on the road. And I was going backstage because that's where my office was, and I was talking to someone, and he was talking to someone, and our backs were to each other, and I turned and stepped on his foot accidentally. And his security was like, oh. I was like, oh, my man, I'm sorry. And he was like, oh, don't worry about it, man. Don't worry about it. And he moved, and he always dressed sharp, And I turned to somebody and I said, who was that? And they said, who was that? That was The Rock. I was like, okay, The Rock who? What's he do? He goes, oh, man, you don't know who The Rock is? I was like, no, man. And then the funny thing was I had to do I had to make sure I picked him up at the airport. Once I got out on the road, I had to make sure I picked him up at the airport, took him to the airport, made sure nobody messed with him, the whole 9 yards. One day, The Rock was doing an autograph session at the WWE's facility. It was called The World back then. And all these kids and family members one night. So me and The Rock got out of the limo and a whole bunch of other people. And I'm walking downstairs through the crowd, keeping the fans away. And the people are going nuts. I get him backstage, and I look out. And my wife was there with my two kids. They were young at the time. And she's going nuts. And you hear a table fall. So I sent one of my guys out. I said, go see what happened, because we were getting ready to bring him up on stage. And kid comes back, and he whispers in my ear. And I says, okay. Rock's like, no, is everybody okay out there? I said, yeah, everything's fine. He goes, no, well, if somebody got hurt, I wanted to bring him backstage. I said, no, Rock, everything's fine. He goes, no, if they got hurt, I want him back. I said, Rock, it was my wife. She stood on the table. She fell.
Yeah, but like,
he just looked at me and cracked up.
Just going back, just going back to you for a minute. I know you mentioned that this was like, security was something that kind of just came along, and I heard you mention you played football. Like, were there any other aspirations or goals that you wanted to chase after prior to obviously diving into security, and then realizing how good you were at this, and how beneficial it could be to you? Like, but were there any other things or professions that you were interested in, or wanted to chase after?
Yes, and I used to tell everybody, I said, I'm going to go back to my first love, and everybody say, well, what's that? I said, I've always been a fan of I've always wanted to be an actor. And I said, hell, I've acted like a tough guy for the last 40 years. Maybe if they can find an old spot for an old man like me, So I've always wanted to be an actor. always. And you know, I I don't know if I've got the patience to do it now, but it's always been my first love. My youngest son, he grew up on Broadway, and he's still in the entertainment field. My oldest son, he's a police officer, but acting's always been my thing, you know.
Mm. No, that's cool. That's cool to hear, man. That's like very interesting to know that you were, once upon a time, you were interested in pursuing acting, and like, before, we obviously dove into WWE a little bit, but before we fully get into that, like did you have a chance to like work for any other sports or entertainment companies that are out there right now?
Yes. When I got back into the field, because there was a minute that I just stayed away from the field for a while due to an injury that happened on my last day with WWE. I started working for a company called Securitas,
Mm-hmm.
and they moved me a level one supervisor. And so I did a lot of the Red Bull events, and I did a lot of the Jets and the Giants at Stadium, Yankee Stadium, things of that nature. But let me tell you, nothing that I have ever done in the security business will ever surpass, WWE. I mean, when I tell you that, at least in my opinion, it was so family orientated. I mean, I know now it's a multi-billion-dollar business, but back then it was, we hung out together, on with the wrestlers. I mean, not the wrestlers, but the referees and I were very, very close. Uh, Mike Chioda.
Yeah. Did you know Mike Chioda still going to this day? Still going, man. I don't
Oh
know.
yeah,
Yeah, he.
Mike and I talked 2 months ago.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. He just appeared on the I don't know if you heard of the wrestling company. It's a new wrestling company called All Elite Wrestling, and it was co-founded by Dusty Rhodes' son, Cody Rhodes. And he was at
Yes, yes,
he was in WWE at the time when you were there, and he's probably co-founded
yeah.
this national televised wrestling company that's on TNT every Wednesday. And yeah, he's doing real well, from the looks of everything. So yeah, it was just crazy that I just wanted to mention Chioda, because Chioda's working for them now, because he got furloughed from the WWE back in April, because they did like
Yes.
a spring cleaning
Yeah.
spring cleaning type of thing, and to save budgets and stuff like that. So he popped up on AEW, and he looks like he back, doing back in the refereeing scene. So it's good for him, man. It's good to see like Chad Patton still going. I know he's still with WWE. Like it's crazy. You mentioned some of these names, man, just to see that, like, where people are now, still to this day. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
And it.
And they were just great people. Yeah, we had fun.
Mm.
We had fun together. On our off days were really our off days, man. I mean, when we were, overseas, it was just, I can't even put into words.
Yeah.
I mean, when I look back, and next week I'm going to be turning 59, and when I look back, and I can say that I've been to over 50 countries in all 50 states, and just I just sit back and just thank God on how much He has blessed me to be able to travel and to do something that I really, really have fallen in love with. I mean, security has been a thing. It's like not even working, because it just came so natural to me. I mean, it goes back to my days when I played football, because, I was a quarterback, and I was always that person that, I love the fact of being in charge and being able to make decisions, and that's what Rich Herring and Jim Ross, and then when Johnny Laurinaitis came on, and they really gave me a lot of respect for the fact that when people tried to jump into that ring and tried to disturb these guys, and basically try to feature them. These guys are there to entertain, and when somebody comes in to try and injure or attack or things of that nature, number one, they don't realize it. These are some of the toughest men that I have ever met in my life. So that says a lot just starting. And then to do that, my whole job was to make sure that, they didn't succeed. And I thank God for the fact that, I can seriously sit back and go, not one. I can't remember one guy when I was at ringside, jumping in the ring and succeeding on doing what it was that he planned to do, because it became personal with me. Because, if somebody succeeded, then they look around and they say, well, we don't need Jimmy. we can do this on our own. So,
I say, I remember when I first I first searched your name on social media, and I'm gonna tell you how I initially heard your name, and it's kind of a funny story, and I'm very interested to see if you remember. But when I first searched your name on social media, it came up as the boxer James Tillis, so I had to double check and make sure. I was like, is this the famous boxer James Tillis? Is this who I'm talking to? So that was kind of funny. One thing that I wanted to make sure, I was like, oh, I'm interviewing. He's a famous boxer and a former head of security. I was like, oh man, I got to get the jack of all trades right here.
No, he's actually a relative.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So my dad says. My dad said, "Yep." He goes, "That's your cousin, son." My dad, God rest his soul. Yeah. He's passed on now, but my family, was my father's side. We were a big fight family, and my dad, Reuben Hurricane Carter, was my godfather. Muhammad Ali and Reuben and my dad grew up in the same training facility. My dad was not a bad fighter, but it was one of those things. But yeah, he always says that. But
yeah, that's interesting.
But anyway, go ahead.
Like I'm curious, man. Like, for as long as you were around pro wrestling, I can hear the passion that you have, like when you speak of just the times you had and how much you eventually grew to love, what you were doing as far as like being in that WWE circle. Like, were you a fan of it, or you were like aware of professional wrestling? I know you said you weren't aware of the WWF, but like, were you aware of professional wrestling, or did you ever get a chance to see any pro wrestling, any form of pro wrestling, before you eventually got to WWF?
No, not at all. I mean, I knew the names. I remember I think it was 84, 85. Everybody was talking about, WrestleMania is coming out. WrestleMania. I was like, well, what's WrestleMania? But I knew about the Hulk and, Hulk Hogan, and I knew about Randy Savage and Andre the Giant and things of that nature. I knew the names because, when they would, if somebody would come into one of my clubs, because by this time I was, making my way, in the nightclub industry, and I would be like, okay, that's the Hulk, and okay, that's Randy Savage, and things of that nature. But as far as sitting down and watching a wrestling show, no, I never did. And when I became head of security for WWE, it was unbelievable. I can seriously sit there to watch somebody like Jeff Hardy, for instance, jump up on the top rope and fall backwards. And this is before the show started. This is before the crowd got into the fall backwards or do a stunt. And I would be like, wow, I would say a couple other things, but I don't think you want to hear that. And I'd be like, you got to be kidding me.
Nah, shit, you share it all,
You
man. Like
know,
Jeff Hardy's still going hard to this day. To this day, Jeff's still going.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to somebody like Mark Henry. We were in Philadelphia one day, and there was a basketball hoop out back, and Mark Henry, probably well over 400 pounds at 6 foot, took the basketball and dunked it. These guys were just, not only were they great performers, they were unbelievable athletes.
Yeah, I was about to say super athletes.
I mean,
man.
it was just, yeah, it goes beyond what you would think. I got a funny story to tell you. One day we were in Boston, and I used to keep the backstage clear, and Mr. McMahon didn't want anybody backstage. That was the number one rule. You could not get backstage, and especially when I was there. And I kept that backstage clear. Gentleman comes up to me, and I said, "Excuse me, sir. Who are you here to see?" He says, "I'm here to see Johnny Laurinaitis." I said, "Do you have an appointment?" He says, "No." I believe he said no. I'm not. So I had to ask him to leave backstage. And he became one of my closest friends after he was 4-time WWE champion, and now he's the second biggest actor in Hollywood right now. And I just look at him and I'm like, oh my God. Dave Bautista.
Oh man. Man, yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And he was a gentleman. He was a gentleman. He was like, okay. The next day he came back, he had that appointment, and the rest is history.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean,
but Batista has done quite well for himself. I think we can all say quite well. Quite well for himself.
Absolutely. And you know what? The funny thing about it is, I watch his movies and Rock's movies. Nowadays it's like, especially during this pandemic, because all my clubs are closed. So I get out and try and play golf as much as I can, and I talk to my kids as much as I can, and and I watch Batista and Rock movies.
That's great. Like, is it like kind of like I know we mentioned it earlier, but like, is it like crazy to you to just like you just sitting there and like you watch these dudes, man, like you see them early on in the beginning of their careers, and you watch them progress to be essentially some of the figureheads of WWE / WWF, and then to see them branch off from that and use that platform to go on and become big time players in the movie industry, and now they use that platform to branch off into other parts of businesses. Like it's crazy to like I'm assuming it would be crazy for you to like just basically essentially seeing these guys from the start of their careers to see where they are now. I know that's a crazy thing.
It is, and all I can say is God bless them. I mean, between Rock and Batista and Cena, and because when Cena came in, and he was a rapper,
Yeah.
he had a rap album out, and I bought it, and let me tell you something, I played that thing in my truck all the time. I really did, because it's something when you see these guys and you want to support them, but you don't realize that there are hundreds and millions of people that are just saying, wow, this kid's got something, or that guy's got something, and before you know it, they're out there, and it's like boom. And then I'm in their rearview mirror. I was at a show back in September. I went to a show with a gentleman by the name of Rich Asciuto. Rich Asciuto was the kid that was responsible for sending me all over the world. He was with the travel department. Rich and I have stayed close. We went to a show in September, and Undertaker had gotten us tickets, and I hadn't seen Undertaker in years, but we would text back and forth. He's become he was always a close friend of mine, and we still stay in touch.
Mm.
And he brought me backstage, and we laughed and joked, and it was like we hadn't, it was like we hadn't missed a beat, laughing, joking, taking some pictures and whatnot. And then I saw the thing on Twitter about his last ride.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to him after WrestleMania. Oh gosh, I think it was the one in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And because I would, because his matches were always so, they were always, he would always tear the house down with those matches.
Yeah.
And I would always want to make sure that he got into his car, got to his hotel, and we were talking. And I said, "Take," and he always calls me Jimmy Jam. He's like, "Yeah, Jimmy." I said, "You're going to do this forever." He goes, "I tell you this much. When and if I do leave, they're going to take me out of here kicking and scratching and clawing." And then I looked at his thing and I said, "I don't even know if I want to look at this because, I was after Taker's matches while I was there for WrestleManias and all pay-per-views.
Mm-hmm.
He was a man that he would tear the house down.
Yeah.
Between him and the People's Elbow with The Rock and Rey Mysterio, 619, and oh gosh,
Did you
some of the matches.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Did you because we I always hear from a lot of wrestlers that have worked with the Undertaker for I don't know, for a long period of time, and even for a period that people that have worked with him for short periods of time, they always talked about how there was like an immense amount of respect for him from the wrestlers. Like everybody kind of looked up to him as like that that leader per se. And I just wondered, like, if you could ever get the sense from you being around him, like, was that kind of like the same thing? Because there's a lot of people that have spoken about this, about just yeah.
Absolutely. Undertaker, he was the leader.
Mm.
There was no question about it. He didn't mix words. It was all about business. It was all about making sure that you did what you had to do to get that point across during a match where it was supposed to be a high or low. I don't even wrestle, but Taker, he wanted to make sure that the point got across in his matches.
Mm.
He was the ultimate professional.
Mm.
I mean, I mean, to watch him work and in the years that I sat at ringside, to watch him work was just. He was just so precise, and I guess that's why he stayed in for he was there for 30 years or wrestled for over 30 years because he was excellent at it, and probably still is. Probably still care about another WrestleMania if he wanted to.
Yeah, man. Undertaker, he in the Last Ride documentary that you were referring to, it was like a multi-part series on WWE streaming service. And at the conclusion of it, he kind of gave like a subtle hint that his last match at WrestleMania may have been his last, but I don't think anybody's kind of bad. I think because the pandemic sort of forced WWE to close off any opportunity for fans to come see it live, so they had to do it from their performance center in Orlando. And I guess they filmed Undertaker's match on the outside location, and everybody's kind of saying they for sure think Undertaker wants to get one more in front of fans, opposed to having his last match done, cinematically and stuff like that, where people aren't live to see it. So I definitely think it's gonna be another time we see Undertaker back in the ring. But one thing I do gotta ask you, and you mentioned Vince McMahon earlier. Are there any funny Vince McMahon stories that you can share, or like interaction that you've had with WWE CEO?
Mr. McMahon and his entire family are I'm being, and I say this wholeheartedly,
Mm-hmm.
are the most genuine, true, nicest people. And I've worked for a lot of people. They are just unreal. I mean, some of the stuff that I don't even think I can tell you some of the stuff, you know. But this McMahon is just genuinely a nice guy, and he and I are born on the same day.
Ah, there you
So,
go.
yeah. But no, he's just, you know, him and his Shane and I still text from time to time
Oh, that's
as
good.
well.
That's good.
Yeah, you know. I
Can
mean,
I add in something real quick before you continue? Like, because you know, it really just came to
yeah,
my brain. Like, one thing, another thing, like I mentioned about the Undertaker, that you know you hear a lot of wrestlers talk about. One thing I always hear about Shane is that he was always like, despite him being a McMahon and his father running the company, he was always like one of the guys, like opposed to being like
yes.
coming off as a boss type. And essentially, like, I mean, technically, you know, he wasn't, but like still, like he, you know, his father is the, you know, running this joint. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it was always seen, like you always hear a lot of wrestlers talking about how Shane was always just one of the guys. You know what I'm saying? He never came off as, you know, anything more than that, even though he was.
Well, Shane, not only was he one of the guys,
Mm.
Shane probably put in one of the. I've got about. I know I can go back to about 5, 10 matches of all times, and Shane's match with Kurt Angle
That Kingdom, yep.
in New Jersey.
Uh-huh.
In New Jersey, I think it was Royal Rumble.
Oh,
Um, yeah, I think it was Royal Rumble, and Shane and Kurt Angle. I mean, they were going head to head, and it was just an unbelievable thing. And they were back in the back part of the ramp, where the ramp comes down, I believe, and it was supposed to be. Now I'm gonna give you one more hint. It was supposed to be breakaway glass,
yep. I know
and
exactly
it
what
wasn't.
you. I know exactly what you're talking about. It was at,
And
yeah, I think that was in 2001 at the King of the Ring pay-per-view. Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
so it was King of the Ring.
Yeah, King of
I
the
think
Ring.
it was 2001 or 2002.
Mm.
And they, you know, I had an IFB on, and you know, I could hear everything that was going on in Gorilla. Gorilla's the offstage area,
Mm.
and they couldn't get through that glass. And now, mind you, they were already beat up and bloody. And Kurt Angle, you know, he was the world champion wrestler, you know, and things of that nature. So here I am. I'm off to the left. I'm behind the camera, and here I'm thinking, okay, they've got to stop this. And they just kept on trying to break the glass. Kept on. And Kurt grabs Shane and says, we're going to spin into it. And when they spun into that glass and it shattered, and they were cut all over the place, fans went nuts. I had this panic look on my face that was like, oh my God, I can't believe you just did this. Match stops, everybody's backstage. And it was just one of those things where Shane was one of the guys. He was, you know, he didn't play that, okay, nah. From what I heard before I got there, Shane used to come in and put up the rings with the referees and things of that nature. He, you know, he really did it, and probably still does it all.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, no, that's cool to hear, man.
Yeah.
Let's say, did you yeah, but going back to Vince McMahon, yeah, I know me and you kind of went off on the Shane McMahon route, but like any memories that you get shared with Vince McMahon?
Wow. when Mr. McMahon got injured once, and I had to take him back to one of his doctors the next day, and he had hurt both his legs.
Oh, I remember this. This
So
was, I remember this. This was live on pay-per-view, right? I remember this happened on live
yeah,
pay-per-view. Yeah, he tried to run to the ring, and then he. That's not funny, but it's like I remember people speaking about it. Like you could continue.
just to give you an idea, and I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass. It's just that him and Shane, they just an unbelievable toughness.
Right.
But anyway, I had to take him back to a doctor in, I believe it was Georgia. I'm not sure, but I had to take him on the plane, and we get onto his private jet, and I'm holding his leg while somebody was trying to scoot a prop under his leg, and somebody said something to me, and I turned to answer, dropped his leg. He was like, "What the hell?" And his wife was there, and I was like, "Oh my God." He looked at me and goes, "Are you kidding me?" Oh, man. Yeah.
This McMahon
That was probably, that was probably one of the funnier things,
Yeah, you always say
No
like
doubt, gosh.
you always say that Vince McMahon is quite the character. But one thing you mentioned about I guess the toughness aspect is like one thing that's constantly comes up is as far as like the in ring stuff or what he may ask wrestlers to do. Like one thing you always hear is that he never asked wrestlers to do something that he wouldn't do. I've heard that one quite a lot. Like, and I just wanted to speak to that.
Well, see, on that aspect, I wouldn't know because I was never in the ring.
Okay.
Because that wasn't my. I mean, trust me, they had me get beat up quite a few times. With wrestlers coming in. But as far as what Vince told the boys, that was between him and the boys, and that was an area that I wasn't privy to, didn't want to be privy to, because that was them with Vince. I had no business in those conversations or anything of that nature, because, Vince was and still is a master, and he had no reason to tell me anything about that. He was just always so genuine when he talked to me. Like the last time I showed up at a wrestling event was in September, and he was walking down the hall, and he looked at me and he goes, "Jimmy Tillis," and he remembered me. And I was like, and that says a lot because of the mere fact that how busy and how successful this man is, and he's got 1,000 people in his ears day and night. And for him to remember me and say, I mean, yeah, granted I was there with him all the time, but he didn't even have to acknowledge me. He kept on with his conversation, and he stopped to take time out to just to see how I was doing. And and was concerned about it. How are you? How's your family? How is your wife and your kids? And, it wasn't it's just, like I said, a genuine person. I mean, a lot of people say, oh, nah, it's not true, at least not in my case. And you know what else I love? I used to get this all the time when I would come home. That WWE stuff is fake. It's this, that, and the other. And I said, it's well choreographed. And then one guy told me one day, he goes, "I could do that." I said, "Oh yeah,
right."
I said, "Do me a favor, stand up." I told him, "Stand on this bar and look at the mirror and fall backwards. I said, do that once a day. And when I come back, you tell me how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, what? I said, Jeff Hardy does it constantly. I said, Rey Mysterio flips around and comes down constantly. I said, and this is before shows. Mm-hmm. No, they do. As a matter of fact, I'm going to get you front row tickets next time we're in New Jersey, just so that you see it. I got like 3 guys that I know, huge fans. Why? Because they were talking garbage, got them front row tickets, they saw the product, and then they sat back and go, oh, my God, you know?
Yeah. No, I think that's like one of the biggest misconceptions about professional wrestling. Like people who are, I'll say, not informed about what these guys and girls put their bodies through. You know what I'm saying? These men and women put their body through. Like it's crazy. Like how people, like they. I mean, but I try not to assume that everybody knows like how much they go through and the constant travel and having to go around there and essentially throw your body around on a under a wooden surface with a thin sheet of padding underneath it. You know what I mean? Like you just imagine doing that however many days a week, and then
metal.
Yeah,
and metal.
Right, and metal, and getting slammed through tables and falling off ladders. Like, if people just assume, like, hey, I can do that. Like, it's, they use the term fake, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure if me as a human being right now were to fall off a ladder, that'd probably be the end of me right there. 100%. 100%. So I have like immense respect for what they go out there and do, and I'm sure that's not. And then the crazy thing is, like, we just mentioned how it's choreographed and scripted. I'm pretty sure that's not easy too, to go out there and make it look that smooth, because there's some people that go out there and can stink it up. And then, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And these guys, they did it with ease.
Right.
Night after night after night, and that's what gained my biggest respect for them. Especially when I first started, because I didn't know them. Devon and Bubba Ray, they were both from New York, and they knew the clubs that I ran, so we hit it off real well. The Godfather, we hit it off real well. D'Lo Brown, we hit it off real well, because these guys, they were like, oh, all right, so what kind of clubs did you do? And then when people started jumping in the ring, and I started making sure that they didn't do that anymore, then they saw that I wasn't there, just because or anything of that nature. They knew that I was taking it seriously and taking their safety seriously, because of the mere fact that that's what I felt like. You came in that ring, God only knows what your intent was. I had one bad incident. I was in Vegas, and a kid jumped over the rail, and Jericho was between me and the kid. And the kid was able to hit Jericho, but when Jericho got hit, I took the kid off his feet and was able to throw him back over the rail so that he could get arrested. But that was an offense on me. And Jericho always said, you let me get hit, Tillis. You let me get hit. I was like, oh, God, I'm never going to get hit this.
Have you seen any of what Chris Jericho is doing to this day?
No, like I said, if I start watching the wrestling again, then my old ass is gonna say, you know what, the mind's gonna say, yeah, you can do this, you can do it, and the body's gonna say, you got your mind. I mean, at one point I was on the road 300 days a year. And
you were immersed in it. I said you were immersed in it.
Yeah. And I miss I miss the boys.
Yeah.
I miss the conversations and things of that nature. But I really don't miss the travel. I trained Jim Kelly. Jim Kelly's now the director of security there now. And I talked to him from time to time. And at one point there was a time where I said, Jim, let me do a tour. Let me do a year. Let me do 6 months. And, security's gone in a different direction now. And, and God bless him. And he's like, Jimmy, you don't want to get back into this. he goes, I have no life. He goes, I have no life. I said, yeah, but you're doing a great job. And trust me, he has the same type of affection that I have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's a retired New York State trooper, and he's just a real nice guy. The ACOC over there still. Muriel Howell, she left. And those are the only three. Now the rest are retired police officers, and I don't know them. And I told Jimmy, I said, I made your job a lot easier. He goes, no, you made it so we don't have to tackle these guys. Now we just get to arrest them. Because see, when they would jump in the ring, if you ever look at when fans attack, I got a couple ones in there, and they were always fun.
But I mentioned it earlier during the interview how when I first heard your name, and I feel like this is the time to now bring that up. So an individual by the name of Armando Estrada did an interview on Busted Open Radio, which is co-hosted by I think you know this individual, Bubba Ray Dudley. He co-hosts that show. Yeah, on Sirius XM. Yeah, he co-hosts that show. Along with Mark Henry and Tommy Dreamer, they all co-host, at different points during the week.
Really?
Yeah, they all got it. You can go check it out. It's on Sirius XM Radio. Mark Henry, Tommy Dreamer, and Bubba Ray Dudley. They all take guests and they all co-host throughout the week at different spots with the main host, whose name is David LaGreca. But they all, they all alternate, and it's a real good show. I think they're the #1 sports show at Sirius XM. Yeah, so it's a real good listen.
Okay.
But I first heard your name because Armando Estrada was on that show, and he said that there was one time when Edward Fatu, also known as Umaga, the late Umaga who passed away, he said that Umaga accidentally threw a chair at a fan's head at a live event, and he said that he called you over there to make sure, like he said. So essentially what happened was Umaga used to go to the crowd and act as if, because the character Umaga played, like the wild man, the wild Samoan, and he would he would go into the crowd and act as if he was going to throw a chair at the fan's head. And one time one of the chair actually slipped out his hand and hit the fan in the head. And Estrada said and Estrada said the fan was like the fan got up and he was like, yeah, like all amped up because he just got hit in the head with a chair by Umaga. And then he said he went up to you and he was like, James, like, man, please, he's like the head of security at the time, James Tillis. He was like, I made sure I went to go talk to him. He was like, James, make sure this guy gets some merchandise, make sure he gets some hats or whatever it needed, like whatever it need be. He was like, no lawsuits, man, no lawsuits.
Yeah.
I was like, so
I vaguely remember the incident.
I just wanted to bring that story up because I think that was a real funny story, man. Like, of course, the late Ever Fatu, who played that Umaga character to the T, like very, very believable. Like me watching that, I think I was probably like maybe 11 or 10 when that happened, and just like he was very, very believable. Let me just say that. Like I thought he was just this crazy crazy dude. Like and he played it played the character real well. So I think that was a real funny story. But James, one thing I did want to ask you about, like, have you ever heard, like, this is like this and I've heard wrestlers speak about this, but like I've never heard like a first hand, like it's like, so it's this myth, I guess, in WWE, not necessarily a myth, but like it's this legendary story called the plane ride from hell in 2002, when the company was coming back from the UK to the US after a tour. Like, have you ever heard of this, or were you a part of this? Like, there's so many stories came out of it. Like, I guess Kurt Angle and Vince McMahon like wrestled on the flight. And, yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and let you take the reins on this one because I've heard so many stories about this.
That one I don't know.
Oh, okay.
My scariest plane ride was, we were on our way to Perth, Australia, and we started taking on a lot. I think there's something going on where we had to get fuel, and me and Paul Heyman were sitting next to each other, and we were near Siberia. We had to land, I believe it was in Russia or a Russian outpost, to get fuel in the middle of a snowstorm, where they had to clear the tracks, and they wouldn't let us off the plane, obviously. And then we took off at an angle that was just unbelievably, it was almost at a 90-degree angle to get out of this snowstorm. And Paul Heyman looks over at me, and he says to me, he goes, if we get out of this alive, because trust me when I tell you, we were circling, and it was getting kind of close. And you can ask Paul Heyman, he goes, I'm going to punch Vince in the mouth if I ever get out of this alive. I was like, oh my God. And we had a gentleman that was there. He was supposed to wrestle Big Show. Big kid. I forget his name. He had just gotten with the company, just huge, just like 6'7", and just have you ever seen the movie Troy with Brad Pitt?
I think I've seen like clips of it, but not the full movie.
Okay, in the very beginning, Brad Pitt, his character, has to kill this giant. Well, that was the kid that was in wrestling. He did not get back on that plane. He says, forget this. I'm not back on this plane. And did not. He stayed in Australia. He became an actor.
Oh, Nathan Jones. Nathan Jones. That's who it was.
Yes,
yeah, Nathan Jones.
It.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Nathan was he was only in WWE for like a short time. Like I remember he had the WrestleMania match. Well, he wasn't in, he wasn't in the match, but he was a part of WrestleMania 19 in 2003 in Seattle.
Yes.
With Undertaker.
And he quit.
Yeah.
He quit right after that plane ride to Perth, Australia. He says, I'm not getting back on that plane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me tell you. And there were so many people that that I still keep in contact with, like Shelton Benjamin, another very, very close friend of mine.
He's still going.
Yeah, and Shelton's probably Shelton's just an unbelievable athlete.
Yeah.
Shelton can stand jump to the top rope, and stand there, not with his hands, just jump up and stand there on the rope. Shelton, unbelievable athlete. Yeah. MVP.
Still
just
going.
Another one. Still going. And I look back, like getting back to the point where you say when you look back on, there's Rock and Batista and Cena and Randy Orton, yes, and Undertaker and Mark Henry, but there's so many other guys that I made such great connections with, and it was just a blow, a real serious blow when I heard that Gasper,
Shad,
drowned so tragically. Yeah, because Shad was one of those guys, that we're talking about it. See, this is funny because I don't get to talk about this much because I don't. I'm one of those guys. I leave my past in the past. But when I get a chance to talk about it, and by the way, you are my first interview since they interviewed me and Jimmy Noonan for in the WWE magazine 100 years ago.
Wow.
But Shad was always one of those guys where I don't care how bad you were feeling or how tired you were. This kid always had a smile on his face, and I hate to use the word kid because he was a gentleman. He was a gentleman, and he's going to be missed.
Right.
Because he was not only a gentleman, but he died a hero.
Yeah. You
and
hear that.
Not too many people can say that.
I say you hear that a lot from a lot of people that since Shad has passed away, a lot of stories that came out about Shad and just the individual he was. Like very, very like
Yeah.
people made him seem like a very comforting individual. Like, and as big as he was, you know what I'm saying? Like, and people always make him seem like he was just
Yeah.
like one of the nicest dudes out there. And like the way he left us, it made it seem like not even made it seem, it's just what it is. Like he's very very like put people before him, and you could tell that obviously through his action, his last action, it was that his son was the most important thing to him. You know what I'm saying? So I think that was like a very
Exactly.
a very touching thing, and it was real great to see a lot of people show a lot of memories, and show a lot of love to Shad, and people so I wanted to I did want to mention this to you now that you just brought it up. So when Shad unfortunately passed away, it was a donation, like GoFundMe type of thing set up for his family and his son, to make sure they were taken care of. And
Right.
there was a massive donation made, and on the donor's name it read CTC, and that was the name that was used by John Cena, Shad, and JTG when they worked together on WWE TV for a couple of weeks or a month or so. So
Yeah.
and John Cena has never came out and openly either denied or recognized that he was the one to assumingly donate this amount of money. But like I think a lot of people kind of put two and two together and were like that kind of seems in line with something that John Cena would do. Kind of just throw that in there and kind of let people make the assumptions about it. But I think that was just a cool thing that had came to my head as as you mentioned, Shad.
It wouldn't surprise me because that's. But like I said, it goes back to when we first started this. It was a family on the road,
Yeah.
man. It was just, you know, it was just one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how it is now, but it was really a family.
Mm-hmm. So I did want to ask you, man, like for somebody, dude, man, you have been around and you've seen so many WrestleManias. Like, can you just explain like the atmosphere in some of these places, man? Because like I've always wanted to go to a WrestleMania. I haven't been to one. Of course, you see it on TV and you can get the energy from it from there. But I'm sure it's like nothing crazier or nothing more like energetic than being in a building, or like I know we're in the Astrodome for Mania, the Safeco Field when like just 70, 60,000 some people going crazy for 5 or 6 hours, man. I know that energy has got to be insane, and then the presentation of it.
It's like nothing that you will ever see,
Mm,
ever.
mm,
I mean, I would think that my biggest WrestleMania would probably be my first one,
mm,
which is WrestleMania 16 in New York City,
mm,
at the restaurant. We had people coming in and people standing outside, round the block, down the street, wanting to get to the restaurant, the whole 9 yards. And then my next one would be the next year that I was actually in charge of everything that went on there.
mm,
In I believe it was Toronto, and we had fan access, and we had everything going, that entire week, and that was big. And then we came back to New York City to do WrestleMania 20. That because you got to remember now. Here's this little guy that ran all these nightclubs in New York City, and everybody. Now I come back, and I'm running the security for WrestleMania 20 in New York City, and it was just. Now I'm playing big celebrity. Now I'm going to all of my clubs and whatnot. Hey, what's going on?
big time in them.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing this no more. Yeah, it was one of those things now. Oh man, can you get us into WrestleMania? Can you get this? Like, no.
Yeah, I know that's good. I know that's crazy, man. I like having like that full circle moment. Like, man, you in Madison Square Garden. You know what I mean? And you know, like, I think, like, even though, you know, compared to some of the other WrestleManias, you know, when it's in these big stadiums, like, I think the significance and the aura that is within Madison Square Garden, like, made that even more, you know, special.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it did.
So,
And plus, all the guys, a lot of the security there knew me.
mm,
It was to the point after I would give my pre pre shift speech and tell all the different department heads on what we were doing during this show, especially on TVs. I would end it always up with this. I would tell them, I said, now listen, everything that I just told you is to be taken seriously.
mm,
This is what we're doing. This is what I said. But if you see my fat ass move towards that ring, you know all bets are off. Somebody has breached the ring.
yeah.
I said, and somebody's going to come in there and help my fat ass out.
Oh man. And, so one
That's how it always ended.
so like one thing I really did want to ask you was like, so back I believe it was I believe it was back in '96 when the group started, and it ended in '98. But like, if you have any memories of like the Nation of Domination, like The Rock, Farouk, always known Ron Simmons, you know, D'Lo Brown, Mark Henry, like and the Godfather, like back then, I'm assuming, like, you know, that's not even assuming, just, you know, what it is. Like, you know, you see these 4 or 5, you know, strong black men back then, and they, you know, basically, you know, telling the world, or a predominantly white audience, you know, like what it is to be a black man and represent, like, strongly representing the African American culture. Like, did you ever notice like any type of different responses to that? Because I'm like, back then, I'm sure people weren't as privy to, you know, the experience of a black man, or, you know, what it was like to be an African American in the U.S. And back then, you know, with the Nation of Domination, they were sort of, you know, not even portraying, but, you know, letting people know like what it is. And I was just curious as to, like, because I mean, I've heard, you know, D'Lo and Ron Simmons speak about this countless times, about some of the, you know, the trials and tribulation that they've had to endure just for being black. And I was just wondering, like, were you able to see any, or you know, hear anything from these guys, from their experiences as they were in the midst of, you know, basically showing the world of what it is to be, you know, a black man in the U.S.
No,
Okay.
I didn't, because again, that was one of those conversations that the boys would
Right.
have.
Right. Right. Okay.
But what I would do when I first got there,
Mm.
my job was to make sure that Rock was, here. I get him from the airport to this place and things of that nature.
Mm.
And what I did, what I began to do outside of that was I made sure that all the boys
Okay.
were not disturbed. I block off the back parking lot area. I block off, when we were out of the country, I put up the ropes, make sure that the fans couldn't mob them. I did that because, again, it was my job to make sure that everybody there was treated the same, and that's how I looked at it.
Mm.
But when the boys had conversations and it was between the boys,
Right.
no, that was me showing respect for what they wanted to talk. Now, if they wanted to bring me into a conversation, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
But as far as me butting into a conversation, I think that's why I lasted so long.
Mm.
Is because I knew what I was there for. I knew what I was there for, and I tend to think that I did a pretty good job.
Mm. Yeah, I'm sure you did, man. You lasted quite a long time. I'm pretty sure you'll just get that long without, you know, putting in the proper work, you know, to you know, eventually have that tenure there. But I did want to, like, I know you kind of, you know, briefly talked about it earlier, but like, did you guys, like, travel? Well, I mean, of course you did travel with the talents, but like, were there any like fond like car memories that you had from taking the talents to this town or that town, or like was it like was it just any fond like basically like any good road stories? Basically, is what I'm asking.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. I, I'm pretty sure it's a lot of those. It's a lot of those, man. Cause like even on the
I can tell you one.
Okay,
I
okay,
can tell you one.
okay.
Me and Mike Chioda, we traveled a lot together, and we were on our way. We were doing a show in Georgia, and I was on one of these back roads. And the back road, at one point in the road, said 65 miles an hour. And I used to always rent Malibus. Great on gas, whole 9 yards, very frugal out on the road. And I came up over this hill, and as soon as I came up over the hill, the speed limit dropped to 35 miles an hour. And there was a cop. And he hit the lights, pulled us over. Keel was like, Tillis, damn, man, that was a speed trap if I ever saw. I said, yeah. And this guy gets out of his car, and he must have been 6 foot, 400 pounds. Couldn't even get his shirt tucked in. I kid you not. You can call Mike and ask him. And the guy walks up to the car, and I got my hands on the steering wheel. I said, Mike, put your hands in, we can see him. It's daylight. And he gets to my window and looks at me and says, boy, do you know how fast you were going? That's a word that you just don't use with me.
Yeah.
I went off. I said, boy. I called. She was like, Tillis, we're going to get arrested. I was like, Mike, what? And I used every F-bomb in the world. Gave him my license. He came back. He gave me $516 worth of tickets.
Jeez, man. Goodness.
Moline, Georgia.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh, yeah. Boy. And then after he gave me the tickets, now mind you, I pulled over on a gravel road. After he gave me the tickets, his car was behind me. He gave me the tickets. He goes, you can leave now, boy.
You did it again. It is.
And I hit that gas. I hit that gas pedal, and those gravel rocks shot up and pinged him and his car.
You got your get back right there. Got your get back on him right there.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. That's how you do it. But okay, so what like from I kind of want to get like your perspective on like how you would approach this type of situation if you were in security. But I don't. I mean, if you were still with the WWE at this time. But like I don't know if you saw it, but last year at their Hall of Fame ceremony, a fan ran into the ring and like tackled Bret Hart. I don't know if you saw that or heard about that.
I heard about it. I didn't see it.
Yeah, so a fan like
actually I did see part of it. I saw part of it.
Yeah, a fan jumped in the ring and like tackled Bret Hart, and then like immediately as that happened, dude, like not fans but wrestlers, of course, security team was in there, and let me just say that they put a whooping on this dude before they took him out the arena. Like so, like when somebody does that, like are you guys like worried about hurting said individual because they can take some type of legal action, or are they already out of bounds as far as like even having the right to take any legal action because they already violated that by doing what they did? Like I just wanted to get like some insight on that because they did put a nice little beating on the dude for jumping in the ring and tackling Bret Hart.
Well, first of all, from what I understood, and I think it was little Joey Boy, who he's a wrestler. I think the wrestler, the family got to him first,
Mm-hmm.
and you can get caught off guard.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can get caught off guard in any business. I mean, in any type of situation. The thing is, you gotta. There's so many, views you can take from this. What was that person doing that was doing security in that corner?
Mm-hmm.
Was he distracted? Was something else going on in another corner? Did he move? When you have your big stars, everything else becomes secondary.
Right.
Could it have happened to me? Yes, it could have. Would I have let it? No. My ego, and my sense of awareness peaks up to like the 10th degree, especially when a Bret Hart or a Rock or a Stone Cold or Triple H or any one of these well-known people that just want to get in there and make their point. That's when you have to kick it up an extra notch. Apparently, I don't know where they were placed. I don't know the entire situation. If they had security at each one of the ring corners, were they allowed on camera? There's a lot of things that go into it. I mean, you look at a lot of the wrestling back in the early 2000s, you hardly ever saw me because they didn't want me to be seen. I was always behind a camera or kneeling in a corner, but I would always be in a corner where I knew that if somebody jumped into an area, you can forget about the ring. I would come across the ring to meet them at that point. I'm not running around the ring because, and see, some people are, I can't do, no, so, there's just too many variables to that.
Right.
I could say that, my opinion is maybe there was no security in that corner, which would have been a bad move. You always have to have security between the fans and the wrestlers.
Right. But okay, so kind of another topic that I was like kind of interested to get your take on as well. In addition to the Bret Hart, the Bret Hart note was, and we talked about earlier that main event. Just not even the main event, just the whole event as a whole at WrestleMania 20 in Madison Square Garden, and kind of the final images. The final image that everybody saw before that show went off the air or pay-per-view was Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit, who are no longer here, and Eddie passed away, and the Chris Benoit situation involving his wife and child Nancy and Daniel. Do you remember what it was like in the company at the time? When those two passed away, like because there have been a number of wrestlers who have spoken about what it was like during that time and how kind of dark it was in the WWE, especially it hit when it hit hard when Eddie passed away, and then when people were aware of what happened involving Chris Benoit and his family, that just took a whole nother level of, like, I guess, darkness and sadness within the company. Do you remember like what it was like during that time from your perspective?
Yeah. Eddie was a good friend. We were in Minneapolis, I believe it was Minneapolis, and I had gotten ill. I believe it was 2005, and I had gotten ill, and I was off the road from July the 28th. I came back on the road that weekend that Eddie passed, and Eddie had called me and says I don't know if he called me or he saw me at the airport. I don't know which. He goes, no, you're not renting the car. You're going to drive with me first. We were going to do a show, and then we were going to jump on a plane and go to, we were going to Japan. And he had passed that morning, that Monday morning. And then with Chris Benoit, I believe we were in Corpus Christi. And that was just such a tragic.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I know that was a rough situation for a lot of people. Like, and it even there's this show, I don't know if you heard of it. It's on Vice. It's called Dark Side of the Ring. And the guys who make that show, they tell like just these in-depth like recounts of some of the darkest moments in the history of professional wrestling. And their most recent season that started off with the Chris Benoit situation, and they interviewed Nancy Benoit's sister. Chris Jericho was a part of the documentary. Chavo Guerrero. So many people like that were very close to the situation. You know, we're a part of that documentary. So I don't know if anybody else who listened to this, if they never, I'm pretty sure most of like the people who watch my videos, they're very familiar with the series. But if anybody hasn't seen that, it's on Vice. They covered a lot of more topics, but that just specifically what we were just talking about. That's one thing that was that was covered. But yeah, I don't want to end our conversation on that note. But I did want to ask you. It was kind of like a lighthearted thing. But I'm gonna try to jog your memory with this. So there's a wrestler right now who wrestles currently for WWE. His name is Otis Dozovic, and he recalled the time. I'm assuming it was back in 2002 or 2003 or 2001. It was sometime in between there. He was at a live event in Minnesota, and he said that he tried to reach over the guardrail and high five Trish Stratus, who was on her way to the ring. And he was like, he said back then he was like a big stocky kid, like a 200-pound kid. And he said the security, they went over there and they blasted him immediately. Like as soon as he tried to stick his hand over the guardrail to high five Trish or reach out to Trish, he said the security tackled him like with the most force. And I was just wondering, like, did you have any recollection of this? Because I know that was around the time when you were there. It was the time when you were there. So I was just like, that was a funny story that came up that I wanted to ask you about.
It was probably security on the other side. My whole thing was because Trish would always go up to the rail and high five everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So if they put their hand over, and Trish was just unbelievable. Mm-hmm. You talk about tough. Oh my God.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, you have to listen to her, find her acceptance speech into the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
Find that. She mentions the Jimmies. That's the security.
Yeah, that's it right there.
Yeah, but yeah, I didn't. That was my, if too far. If you did something wrong, if you came over the rail, things of that nature,
You got
and I would
man.
always let people know. I would let people know too that I'm not the toughest guy, but I am going to do whatever it takes to stop you from doing what you feel as though you want to do in this ring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was something I took a lot of pride in, and if you ever get a chance to talk to Edge, he before the WrestleMania. The Hall of Fame dinner.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not the Hall of Fame dinner, but the Hall of Fame show every year. I would always walk up to him and always straighten out his. Why don't you just tie my tie? That was my big thing. I loved guys that had perfect ties because I would tie that tie and I'd make sure Justin Roberts and a couple other guys. It was about looking good, man.
Mm-hmm.
And Edge would always be like, "Oh my God!" But it was, like I said, going back to the beginning. At least to me, it was a family. It was like my second family, and a lot of times they shared in, and we shared in all of the moments. I mean, somebody just had a baby, somebody just graduated high school, somebody did this. At one point, I brought Rikishi, Booker T, and somebody else. I took them off the plane, took them to my wife's school. She's a school teacher. And they sat there and signed autographs. I forget. It was, Dudley.
Was it Devon?
No.
Bubba Ray Dudley?
Not
Spike Dudley?
Not Bubba. Spike.
Spike Dudley, yeah.
I took the three of them to my wife's school in Newark, and they signed autographs, and the kids were just astounded. They had no idea, and it was, so these guys, and this is the day of a show. So, and I never realized the effect that each one of them has on their fan base until I got with them. Yeah. And,
yeah, but so
if I
oh no, you go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna ask you, like you mentioned, like the connection that some most if not all had with their fan bases. Like who would you say had the most like ruckus, like just rabid fan base? Like I'm assuming, of course, The Rock would be in there. John Cena, doing his peak when he was like that 2006, 2007, like when John Cena, 2007 through, but basically like 2006 through like 2010 when John Cena was just like the man, and he was carrying the company for like what would you say that those two guys were like at the top of the list when it came to just their fan bases was just like insane?
Absolutely.
Man, like they had to like waiting outside the hotels and all that type of stuff. I know those had to be some crazy days too, because you still hear that a lot to this day. Like you hear wrestlers talking about like how fans will wait outside for them in their hotels, like they'll wait for them in the airport at like 4 a.m. trying to get an autograph. Like you hear a lot of these some of these stories are still like very, very frequent to this day.
Yeah. Well, a funny story. We were in Philadelphia. Rock had just got done with the Mummy or the Mummy's Return, or one of those Mummies pictures. And they said, somebody, I think it was Jim Ross, time, because I think he was in charge of talent relations. He says, "Do me a favor and pick up The Rock." I said, "Wow." He goes, "Yeah. Here's where he's going to be, da-da-da-da." Travel gave me all the information. I was there, plane landed, there I was, boom. So we're laughing, joking, going back. I forget the name of the arena. Probably Wells Fargo Arena. The place is packed. Now, I know he's going to come out. I wasn't doing the ring that night. We had alternated. And so I come down the ramp. Not down the ramp, but off the side of the ramp. And I'm sitting there, and Rock's music hits. And you would have thought that you were involved in an earthquake. The building started. I kid you not. I've only seen it happen one other time at Madison Square Garden for P. Diddy, way back in the early 90s. The room started to shake, and Rock comes out, and he comes down the ramp. People are going nuts. Gets in the ring, and he starts talking, and I'm walking around the ring, everywhere he's facing. I want to be, and my other security's got my back, and he looks at me, and he just gave me that look. And I said, "No, Rock, please don't." And he looked at me, and he waited, and he came out of the ring and went over the rail and got into the crowd. And I'm like, oh my! And I'm standing there right there with him, and people are smacking me in the back of the head, trying to get to him. And I'm like, would you go back in the ring, please? And I'm saying, please, go back into the ring, please. And he looks at me, security's all around. I'm getting smacked and punched. Oh,
Yeah. No, no, but
I felt like I had been beaten up.
you could tell that was one thing The Rock really had with his fan base. Like he liked to interact. You know what I'm saying? He just seemed like
Oh
he
yeah,
didn't want his fan base to think he was too far away to be touched. Like they had to know like
exactly.
like he was there and he was, you know, and it kind of seemed like the same way with John Cena, just interacting, talking to people, you know, going into the crowd, having some fun, and you know, stuff like that. And you know, you mentioned just crowd reactions.
Yeah.
Like I remember like probably the loudest, one of the loudest crowd reactions that I've heard. Like, of course, going back and seeing, because I was like 3 years old back then, but I've seen it on, you know, on social media and WWE streaming service countless times. Was when The Rock became WWF champion. I think it was for the first time back in '99. It was at the MCI Center in DC, and he beat Triple H. And I lied to you now. I remember when the referee, it was referee Earl Hebner. He was the one that was doing the count. He used to do the extra slow count,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
real slow count. And I remember when he hit the three, all you heard was this big, and everybody lost it. Like
Yeah.
I like to this day, that's probably like one of my favorite crowd reactions, because the people just went insane. And I think it also had to do with just the star power that The Rock had, and just the ascension of him as a wrestler. Like, cause like I think it was like probably around that time when everybody was like, yeah, that's the man. That's the man right there in the
Oh yeah.
company. So yeah, that was just another cool memory I wanted to share. But yeah, you
You know, we could sit here for hours and think of the stuff that I've seen.
right, right,
You know,
right.
and I'm sure you've seen it as well because you know you sound like you're well informed. You know, fan of this sport,
Mm.
and it's a sport. Anytime I mean, I
It's a
these
sport.
guys
It's a
when I
sport.
tell you they put
Yeah.
their all, yeah, they put their all into this, and why? To please.
Mm-hmm.
They want to please their fan base, and that's in itself that's remarkable to do it once a week.
Right.
It's really good to do it 3 times a week. Once a week, you put them in contents with the NFL. 3 times a week, you put them in contents with the NBA, things of that nature. These guys get out there and they do it 5 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
And they would jump on a plane and fly to Australia, or fly to South Africa, or fly to, Japan, and do it again, and then jump back on a plane and come back home and do
Or
TV.
hop in a rental car and go to the
You know,
next city.
yeah. Oh, that was a given.
Mm-hmm.
That was a given. You know, I mean to watch somebody like a Randy Orton when he was coming up, he had a thumbtack match
Oh yeah, I remember that.
with Bob Holly. Do you remember that
Yeah.
match? I was sitting right there when he landed on over 200 thumbtacks that's just stuck in his back,
Mm-hmm.
and just there are things like that just to this day I sit in amazement, and go, wow, could I have done that?
Mm.
Yeah, I'm good. Just I remember I told Devon one day, we were on the phone when he was at home, and I said, Devon, they're going to put me in the ring. He goes, no, they're not going to put you in. I said, yeah, they're going to put you. You must have pissed somebody off because you're going to get hurt. I said, I'm just playing. He goes, oh, thank God.
There it is, man, right there. There it is. I say you like I remember earlier, like before we wrap it up here. I mean, you mentioned Edge, and you know he had to retire due to, you know, I think he had like triple fusion neck surgery, and he had to step away for a long time. And he of course he got into acting and branched off. He recently came back earlier this year, and he's back wrestling again. But he unfortunately, I think back in May or June, he tore his bicep, I believe, and he's he's going to be out of action for quite a bit. But he did come back after like 11 or 10 years away. So it was good to see him back. It was like one of those things. I remember when it was at the Royal Rumble, and I'm pretty sure you remember the Royal Rumble when they did the countdown before the wrestler came out. Nobody who knew who it was, who was next. And I remember when Edge music hit.
Right.
Dude, the people, like, it was in I think it was in Houston. I hope I'm not wrong. It was in Houston at the Astro Stadium, and the people lost it when they heard Edge's music, because everybody knew, like, so as soon as that opening riff of his theme music hit, everybody knew. They was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it, because he had been gone for 10 years and they thought he was never gonna wrestle again. So it was good to see him come back, and he got to have his big his big moment. And then you mentioned Randy Orton. He wrestled Randy Orton at WrestleMania this year, and they had a follow-up match, and that's when Edge tore his bicep. So, but he said he'll be back, sometime probably in early 2021. So it's good that he got the opportunity to get the chance to come back. And it was kind of a similar situation to a guy like Daniel Bryan. I don't know if you remember his name, if his name rings any bells.
Yep.
Yeah, Brian, Daniel Bryan, Bryan Danielson. Yeah, him. He had a similar situation, and he got the opportunity to come back. So it was it's always cool to hear those little those comeback stories like that, man. But James, man,
Daniel Bryan was a.
Are you good?
No, I was just gonna say Daniel Bryan. He was another one. Just you give me a name, and especially in that from 2000 to 2011, I'm like, yo, gosh, But it was just a great time. And listen, I know you got to wrap up, man. We've been on this phone almost 2 hours.
It's been a good conversation, man. It hasn't felt like 2 hours at all. It's been a good conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Listen, I just want to thank you. I mean, this was just a real pleasure. I mean, because I don't. The only time I talk about it is, some of the kids in my church, they'll be like, "Oh, Uncle Jim, you were with WWE and WWF, and this, that, and the other." And I'll break out some old pictures, and I'll show them. I got them all on my phone, and I'd show them this one and that one. And I tell everybody, I says, this is when I was with Stone Cold. We were in Japan, and this is me and The Rock, and this is me and Taker. This is me and Triple H, and yeah.
Oh yeah,
but it was
like
it was great going down memory.
Like when you doing the exact same thing for me. Like when I hear you mention a name, and I'm like, dang, I wonder what he thinks about this. Like so you I don't know if you know right now, but Triple H, he's like, I think he's like the head. He's like a vice president of WWE right now. Like he's like, I think he's running his own brand within WWE called NXT, and back then it was called FCW. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah, Florida Championship Wrestling.
No, it was.
What was it?
Well, no, it was NXT for a while. It was NXT. I don't know, because they had the NXT wrestlers come in Miami.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what it's
came
called.
Over the rails. Yeah. And they beat the living crap out of me, and that was their whole gimmick.
Oh yeah,
you got to find that on tape.
I remember that. That was the Nexus. That's what they called them, Nexus. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, and then one of them kicked me in the ribs, and I grabbed his ankle, and I heard Jerry Briscoe go, Jimmy, let go of his ankle, Jimmy. I was like, oh man.
Oh man, yeah.
I got one funny story to tell you, then I gotta go.
Okay, cool.
If you, I don't know if you.
No, it's no problem at all, man. Trust me, I enjoy hearing it.
Booker T just came over from WCW with all the from WCW, and it was him and Stone Cold, and they were having this huge, one guy would attack one guy, and forget it. They were just beating each other for like weeks. And so this one time, they said, "Okay, Jim, you're going to be outside the ring. When Booker comes running into the ring, you got to run over and stop him, and he's going to hit you, and you just fall down, and then him and Stone Cold are going to go at it." I said, "Okay, that sounds good." And we were in Memphis. Never forget it. I was outside the ring, and I got distracted. But there was already security around the ring. That's what I know about distractions. But I was worried about the fan jumping in the ring as opposed to my part in doing this melee that was getting ready to happen. And Briscoe goes, Jimmy, and I was watching this kid that was advancing, and then when I realized, I was like, okay, I hit the rail, and when I hit the rail, I was already late. Mm. And Booker hit me. And I fell straight to the floor. Boom! My nose, I was knocked out. I couldn't hear it. Right? And I hear, Jimmy. 17,000 people in Memphis. It was like, it was Jimmy. And I turned over. My nose is bleeding. It's broken.
Oh, man.
I get up. I go to the back. I shouldn't say it was broken. It was bleeding a lot. I go to the back, and I'm like, oh, way to go, man. And Booker turns around and looks at me. Now, we don't know each other that well. He turns around and looks at me and goes, oh, man. I said, dude, that hurt like hell. He goes, I'm so sorry. From that moment on, we were real tight. Mm. And if you ever talk to him, I beat him in his first day of playing golf. So.
I say if you ever actually wanted to get in contact with Booker T, he has like I think he does like he runs his own wrestling promotion now down in Houston. It's called Reality of Wrestling, and he has like a whole he has like a whole a radio show on ESPN as well. It's called the Hall of Fame podcast. Yeah, he does like a whole whole thing. Like he's Booker T's doing doing well for himself. And you last thing here, because you mentioned Daniel Bryan, so I had to ask you, when you talked about the Nexus attack, Daniel Bryan was a part of that. It was him, Wade Barrett, Bray Wyatt, who else? A guy named Ryback, Justin Gabriel, and then it was a couple of other guys. But Daniel Bryan got fired that day because he choked out Justin Roberts with his tie. I don't know if you remember that. He choked the ring announcer out, and he wasn't supposed to do that. And WWE fired him because Bryan had told the whole story. He said that WWE called him and said they had advertisers to deal with, and he couldn't just do that type of stuff off the cuff. So he said, and of course they brought him back like 2 months later, to turn him against the Nexus. But that was just one thing that came up when you mentioned Daniel Bryan. Like I think a lot of people kind of not necessarily forget about that, but like that's kind of one thing that's like under the radar because that was so long ago. Like he did get fired that day for choking out Justin Roberts.
I would have never known it. Again, see, that's the stuff that's with the boys.
Yeah.
And with everything, you have to always give the boys their respect and their privacy. Mm-hmm. And I was big on that. Mm-hmm. You had my old, and that the respect was earned because I just could not believe that they were as tough as they were. I watched Jeff Hardy hit Brock Lesnar in the head with a folding chair.
Oh yeah.
And the chair folded. Brock was still standing and still going through his moves, but he later said that he could not hear for like 3 minutes. He said all it was just a ringing in his ears. That's how hard Jeff hit him. I was like, it's tough. It's toughness like that. That it's a special type of guy, and Mr. McMahon had 90 to 150 of them that were just everybody wanted their shot. Everybody was just as tough as the next one.
Yeah.
It was just a pleasure.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure to be a part of that.
100%, man. 100%. Well, man, James, there it is.
Listen,
oh, you good?
Are we done?
Oh yeah, I was about to put the closing this on it, but you go ahead.
Because I don't know when you're gonna air this, but I'd love for you to send me a copy.
Oh yeah, no, 100%, man. I'm gonna put this up. I'm gonna put it up this week on. Well, by the time they hear this interview, it'll be Tuesday when I put it up on the 18th, and that's actually that's the day before my birthday actually. So I'm gonna put this up, and yeah.
Oh, okay. Happy
Yeah, I appreciate you.
Mine is on Monday,
Oh, for real?
the
Oh
24th.
yeah, there we go, man. There we
Yeah.
go. That's cool. Happy early birthday to you as well. That's real cool, man. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
the
man.
August children, man. It is August born, man. But yeah, but now I'm gonna definitely send you the link, and so you can check it out. And I put it up. Of course I'm gonna put it up on social media. I know I have your Twitter. I think you gotta I have a pending request to follow you, so I think you gotta accept that so I can like actually like tag you, and you can share it out if you will.
I thought you were phone.
Huh? No, I am, but that's like I have it's pending right now, so you have to accept it so I can actually follow you.
Oh, there it is. Hold on. Got it.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Done. You're in.
Cool. So I'm gonna make sure I so for some of the guys that you mentioned, some of the guys you share stories with, I make sure I tag them on social media, and hopefully you guys can sort of chat back and forth. So I'm hoping that'll be something cool to come out of it. But like I just want to say thank you for taking the time to do this. This was like a really probably the coolest interview that I've done, to be honest with you, man. Like I've interviewed quite a few people. I've interviewed Christian from that used to be with Edge in the tag team. I've interviewed guys like him and Wade Barrett. I don't know if you remember his
Yeah.
name, but I would I've interviewed.
Yeah, Wade Barrett was the one that kicked me in the ribs. He was the next.
the,
Oh, yeah.
the,
And here's a funny story when you had, oh gosh, you had Ed. There were just so many great. When I tell you that when I was there, you had guys in the company that made the company legendary.
yeah.
I mean, you had Stone Cold, you had Triple H, of course, Rock, Undertaker. You had it was just, and then you had the tag teams, the Dudley Boys and Bob Holly and Crash Holly. Uh, who else? God, the Hardy Boys. TNA. That was Albert and
Yeah,
Andrew. What was his name?
Andrew Martin,
Tess.
Tess, yeah,
Albert, Tess, and Trish.
and Trish, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, man.
those are great times.
Some very very cool stories, man. Like I like it, and it was good to hear your background as well as to how you got into your profession and how you were able to attain the amount of success that you were able to attain, and stay at that level of success. So that was real cool to hear, and of course hearing the full kind of like the full circle moment, and like when you got to be the head of security at Madison Square Garden for one of for WWE's biggest show of the year, for the calendar year. You know what I'm saying? So that was real cool. But
Yeah.
James, let the people know where they can I guess where they can keep up with you, or anything that you got coming
Well,
up.
no, because right now, um, I'm not really doing anything. I'm trying to get some. Don't take me off record right now.
Okay.
Trying to figure out what it is exactly I want to say.
Okay.
I'm really not doing the clubs that much anymore.
Okay.
Trying to get into the acting and taking it from there. So now you can put me back on that. I'll go back with that.
Okay.
I'm just trying to get into acting. I've filled my LinkedIn with casting directors and production managers, things of that nature, and just let them look at my resume and look at some of the stuff that I've done, acting like a tough guy, and maybe they can want to see me on screen.
No, nah, man. It's really cool to see that even now you still want to pursue acting, and I hope all that becomes the actuality, and you get to live out that that second portion, and that second portion of a dream, I guess. I guess that's what you call it, or a dream job, or anything
Yeah.
like that. I'm really hoping that comes through for you, man, because like just hearing your stories, man, and hearing what you've done throughout your life, you seem like very experienced, and like you've seen a lot and done a lot, and that I think that's a very far and few as far as people who are able to share these things. You know what I'm saying? So that this was just like real cool for me for sure. One of the coolest, if not the coolest interviews I've done. And yeah, I just wanted to say, thank you for your time.
Hey man, listen, it was my pleasure, and I wish you nothing but success, man. You keep at it and keep on working, brother, because that's the key. And I tell everybody this: you find something that you love, you'll never work a day in your
Mm.
life.
Say that again. It is. Say that again. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Andrew Thompson of the Andrew Thompson Interviews YouTube channel. This is the successful, well-traveled James Tillis. James, I appreciate you, man, and once again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, and God bless.